Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today to go for a test drive in this car right here, the Porsche Panamera Turbo Sport Turismo. Now we're just outside Stuttgart in Germany and I collected the car earlier from the factory in Zuffenhausen, but I'm pretty sure that Porsche saw me coming a mile away because if you've been following my channel recently, you will know that not too long ago I sold a blue estate-like sports car. So I think this is a gentle nudge and subtle hint from Porsche that this could be a potential replacement, and I'm not going to lie, the Sport Turismo version of the Panamera is definitely something of interest to me, and today we're going to take a walk around, talk all about the car. This being the turbo means that it has a whopping 550 horsepower, and then we'll take it for a test drive on the roads around here to see what it's like. So let's get started taking a look at the Panamera Sport Turismo. First thing I'd actually like to talk about is the paint colour of this car. So prior to my 911 GT3 arriving, my previous Porsche was a Cayman GT4, and guess what the colour was? Yep, you've named it, sapphire blue, the exact same shade as this Panamera, so very much a gentle nudge and wink, I think, from Porsche. But let's talk about the Panamera in general, then we'll get on to the Sport Turismo. I'm sure you're familiar with the car, a four-door, luxurious, coupe-like saloon. It's now in its second generation, and last year I took a new Panamera S diesel on a road trip and got to discover what it was about, some of the technology on the interior, and also drive it on a bit of snow, which was very fun. But this is based on the turbo, which means a 550 horsepower, 770 Newton meter, 4 litre bi-turbo V8. We're going to be discovering that later on, and I'm looking forward to driving it. So the Sport Turismo has been introduced on the same line, and I have to say, it is a good looking car. I mean, the second generation Panamera is a significantly better looking car than the first in my eyes to start from, and this, when you add that estate-like proportion to the rear, really gives it something else. I think there's just something really cool about a very fast estate car, and this is the ultimate. The Panamera sits almost as a competitor to the Audi A8, the BMW 7 Series, the Mercedes S-Class, and there's nothing else of that category that really lines up with this. And I mean, talking about the design and styling, obviously the rear is raised to give it this hatch. You have a new style spoiler sitting at the top of the rear window, but it flows very, very neatly, and believe it or not, there is only a 30 kilo weight penalty, and that comes from the fact that the car as standard would have a 3-seat bench in the rear instead of 2 separate seats. So that is literally it. Otherwise, it's the same wheelbase, the same platform, the same engine options. Around the rear, actually, just to talk about the design, I am a big fan of these 3D textured rear lights, especially the way they flow across the rear via the Porsche badge above the Panamera Turbo logo there in the centre, and distinct in this engine format by the quad exhaust, the twin on each side that you have down at the bottom. No doubt you've noticed the wheels. Given that we're in Germany and it's winter, it's a legal requirement to be running the car on winter tyres, so these are a winter tyre and wheel combination rather than the standard 20-inch turbo style wheels that the car would come on, which would obviously improve the looks slightly. But you can see that it's sitting quite low, quite aggressive. As we come round towards the front just to look here, and aerodynamics becoming a big part of every car these days, and especially actually when we come round right down towards the front, you have the quad style lights of Porsche's dynamic headlight system coming in here, lots of open areas for cooling through towards the engine, and even right here some active flaps that you can see that will open to allow cooling through but close to prevent additional drag when it's not required. So I think it's a good looking car. They took the original generation, they made it look even better on the outside, but let's come and have a quick glimpse at the interior of this car as well. And in here, we've been over it in some significant detail before now, but just to look around, you've got a carbon fibre trim. If we step inside, and I'm going to start the car up, it's a keyless system, so the key being in my pocket, Porsche now have this toggle to the left-hand side to start instead. The V8 burbles into life. You have the familiar 5 displays sitting there, and you have this brilliant, large, high-resolution infotainment system in the centre. One thing from previous experience I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of is the touch system for all of your other controls, because you can find yourself fumbling around. It takes some familiarity to learn where each of the different toggles or buttons and switches are for, say, the windows or heated seats or adjusting your suspension. The car has an adaptive suspension system. Of course, it has the different driving modes via Sport, Sport Plus, and Individual to customize your different driving modes. But other than that, it's completely loaded with safety, security, technology systems. We have things like the gigantic panoramic roof, well, the two halves, the front half and the rear half, that are independently controlled. This car has the dual seat configuration in the rear, but even back there is a touch interface for controlling various aspects of the infotainment. It's just a very, very nice place to be. And that's before, actually, I'll leave it running just to warm the car up slightly because it is really rather chilly. Come round to the back. That's before we've even taken a look inside the boot. Of course, powered tailgate, where we have plenty of space. You have the folding rear seats, the 40-20, 40 split for the rear seats, but plenty of luggage. There is the Turbo S e-hybrid version, which basically takes this engine and setup, but adds to it a hybrid system with batteries to take power up to 680 horsepower, 130 horsepower more. So there's a bit more weight and you lose a little bit of the luggage space, which in here is obviously pretty decent. But you'd have 680 horsepower. That's a lot. That's an awful lot. So the car is all-wheel drive, perfect for winter conditions, perfect as a car to basically use for all purposes. So let's close this back down and head back and jump in. I'll just quickly open the rear actually to show you in here a little bit. We'll come back and have a better look later on towards the end. It's a very, very nice place. The black leather in here, of course, complementing, I think, the nature and going well with having a brighter exterior colour. But let's take it out for a drive and see what this thing is like on the roads. The thing with the Panamera, right, is that it's such a usable, almost everyday car, but the theory is that it very much has the driving dynamics of a Porsche sports car. And from experience, it was incredible how even the S diesel with the V6 engine rather than this with the V8 still had so much torque that it went really, really well and drove in an incredibly good way. And this car obviously has adaptive suspension, so you can put it through different modes from comfort to however sporty you'd like it. And as you get moving, it's just gentle and effortless. So at this end of the spectrum, it's a car that's very easy to drive. I particularly liked the windscreen wipers. I know that was a very random thing, but all of these Porsche engineered details, the everyday aspects of the car, are finished incredibly well. And you have similarities with the 911 that come from this 5 style of 5 displays. Obviously it's one central display with 2 digital panels on either side, the sport chrono clock that's in the center. You have great infotainment and sound systems. The sound system in the Panamera is fantastic, and the wipers just went and they're virtually silent and they work really well. So nice little touch on that as well. Let's hope it doesn't get too wet on me. So driving like this, you've got an 8-speed PDK gearbox. It shifts literally the definition of seamlessly. It is completely discreet and there's no intrusion of it at all. If you put it into one of the sportier modes or into manual on the box, or if you turn the drive selector, you can of course use the paddles on the back. But for cruising along, it's comfortable and very, very nice. Obviously it is factory built, so it's not necessarily the same hand, I guess, finish as you would have with, say, the Italian equivalent, the Ferrari GTC4 Lusso, although that is a substantially more expensive car, it must be said. And at the other end, I suppose just beneath this, is the Audi RS6 Performance, but based on a slightly smaller platform. But in terms of fast wagons, fast estate cars, the e-hybrid one of these is basically the ultimate that you could have at the moment. It's an incredibly capable car, a very well equipped car. And I mean, driving along, as I said, quite gently right now, just to experience the car in regular environments. It's without a hitch, it's quiet. It rides, I mean, we're on smooth roads, so perhaps that's a little bit unfair to compare it with, but it rides very, very well. You're not feeling intrusion, and we're on smaller wheels, that must be said. Obviously, the standard summer wheel spec, I suppose, would be the larger 20-inch turbo wheels, like I mentioned. This car has opted with ceramic brakes. You can have various different obviously driving dynamics configurations and options. The Turbo SE Hybrid comes incredibly highly equipped from standard. This has 1 or 2 things that you'd include as options, but just to drive, steering already feels sporty and exciting. As going over the bumps here, yeah, you feel them, but they're not particularly bad. And now we get to countryside road, so we can turn it up into sport mode. The gearbox will drop a gear. You have a bit of V8 you can hear in the background. It flicks. When you watch the rev counter as it flicks between gears, it's incredible because it's so fast. It's donk, 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 whichever way it's going. Up into Sport Plus mode, where things get even crazier, and it's just started to rain, so we won't go silly. Although all-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, you know, no harm, nothing, no issues. It's not very loud unless you get it up towards the red line, which is in the high 6,000s, but just drop down a gear or two, slow down. Bit of sound out of it. Now if I accelerate, we just move and it pulls at you. Obviously, I mean, it's a fairly heavy car. I think it's 2,035 kilos dry weight, but the speed with which it will get going with this all-wheel drive setup, I mean, nothing is faster off the line really than a Turbo S. A 911 Turbo S has everything just completely configured to go. Mach 10, full pace, off the line. So Porsche borrowing some of that in this car to make this a pretty fast equivalent for this category. I mean, it is quite an exclusive category. There aren't lots of them, but what would be interesting to me is to see how many people would order the Sport Turismo versus the normal Panamera. I think that would be very telling of the market for this car. Now they introduced it basically as a what else can we do with the Panamera? Could they make a two-door coupe? Could they make a convertible? Or could they make a shooting brake style estate car? And they went for the latter, which is what we're driving right now. That noise is good. Just gently up through the revs. Let some V8 come through. So you can customize your individual settings depending how you want it, of course, and then even, let's say, when you're in Sport Plus, you can actually soften the suspension down with this touch panel in the middle. As I said earlier, you have to look at what you're pressing. You can put ESC into a variety of different modes, so one click will give you a sporty feel, or you can press and hold and it will go off. And there we go, PSM Sport. You'd have to press and hold it all the way to turn it off. There we go, put it back on for the moment. Different settings on that front. Steering wheel, quite a small wheel, which I quite like. You get a lot of sporty feel that comes out of just holding a small steering wheel. It feels like a sports car because of that, and it doesn't feel like a car that is as big as this car is. I mean, we're talking 5+ meters here, we're talking very, very wide, but it doesn't give you a huge fear of size and scale. It feels like quite a, I guess, reasonable thing to drive. Now, for me, I would like a little bit more flair from it. I would like it a little bit more dramatic in terms of design, perhaps even more aero, if that can be said, if that would make any sense at all on a vehicle like this. Perhaps even more noise on that front. And I think something that gets lost slightly is from cars, and you can see why all manufacturers do it, is that when you have such similarity between the models, whether it's a Macan, a Cayenne, a Panamera, a Cayman, a Boxster, or a 911, everything is very samey, and sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of differentiation. It makes sense for development costs, for parts, for all the work that has to go into it. But actually, this is interesting. As we arrive in a little town here, I should put it back into normal peaceful mode just to, you know, chill and see what that side of things does. Obviously it has stuff like stop start. The engine comes to a stop before you come to a stop. I noticed there as we were rolling in towards a standstill. The dashboard displays, while we're stopped and I can have a decent look at them, have a very high resolution and quality and clarity to them, which is a nice touch. I like the trim with the carbon fibre that's surrounded by chrome pieces around the car, matching with the central console and the steering wheel and those different aspects. And generally speaking, it's all very accurate, efficient, sensible, well engineered, well thought out, and made in a correct and decent way. And we're actually driving at the moment towards Weissach being the home, of course, of Porsche's GT division and their sportiest and most capable cars where they're developed. So it's quite fun. There are lots of nice roads around here to enjoy. So let's see if we can find somewhere where we can push the thing a little bit harder. Here we go then, the countryside, back into Sport Plus, the most dynamic setting, as a very nice yellow Turbo S goes the other way, and a Panamera, a regular model, goes the other way. We're in the land, the heartland of Porsches. So here we go, let's put our foot down and experience a little bit of this. I've got it still in automatic, it's not going to shift manually, but I find these gearboxes these days are very well configured and engineered. They know what you want to do before you know what you want to do. Really and truly, if you want to get maximum performance, and let's say you're driving on a racetrack, you really don't want to be wasting time anymore. Just let the car do its thing. Obviously, if you want to have engagement and enjoyment, then do, by all means, and buy a manual, because that's the proper way to do it, like you can have in the new GT3, he says, given that I've just ordered my GT3 with a PDK, but that goes down to the other cars in my garage. Anyway, nice twisty road here. To get to feel that there's not all that much body roll. The car, with the suspension in the firmest settings, holds really quite well. I mean, obviously you do feel a bit of the weight going around the corner naturally, but this was very much a focus on driving dynamics and making the car drive very well and perform as it should. And you feel a bit of that. And obviously I'm not booting it like crazy. We're on public roads here rather than a racetrack. But in this kind of environment, it does more than enough, really. I'm not sure what beyond this you could possibly want, you know, out of a car other than, let's say, a screaming V12 in the Italian corner, but that will cost you a little bit more than double the price to get there. Obviously you can opt one of these very, very high. You can go to Porsche exclusive and add no end of options onto the top of it should you wish. But driving down a road like this, it's not imposing. I mean, I'm probably talking really rather quickly while driving for my first time down a twisty road in the car, and really quite enjoying it, which is what it's all about, I think. If I pop the gear stick to the left, we're going to go into manual, no more automatic upshifts, but we can enjoy a little bit more of the rev range and push on. And my goodness, even the braking power is obviously pretty clean and efficient as well. Ceramics not really helping in actual stopping power over regular brakes, but giving you much more longevity, especially on the racetrack, more time in effect until they start to get too hot. But here, concentrating a little bit more as I put my foot down, goodness me, just gets a move on. It moves that weight so dramatically fast. And this is not even the quickest version of this car. It's 130 horsepower down on the quickest version of this car. That's ludicrous on its own. Even if it was like 30 horsepower down, you'd be like, the one up is the one to have. But 130 horsepower more. I couldn't tell you the exact prices off by heart, the price difference, but no doubt it's quite a marked step to introduce that e-hybrid technology. And actually, more than half of the Panameras in total are e-hybrids being made. So of the regular car, there's the e-hybrid as well as the turbo version, up to the Turbo S e-hybrid at the very, very top. And obviously that is technology that was introduced and demonstrated in a big way in, well, introduced before, but demonstrated in a big way in the 918 Spider. And it's very much, I think, an interesting way to use tech in the future, because Porsche are doing it for driving benefit, for driving enjoyment, as much as it is for emissions and regulation. So it's a lot about introducing extra enjoyment, extra power, extra grip, extra ability to pull out early in a corner, as much as it is also the side where it's more economical and it's more environmentally friendly, and that side of things too. But we're back in town. Let's swing it off into, well, not off, into normal mode. Come to a stop. Oh, yes, it did. It did stop. It does take a moment to start back up. So what I noticed at a traffic light is going to put my foot back on the throttle. The time delay, there is a slight delay. It's not like as soon as you lift off the brake in some cars, they'll fire up, so that by the time you're back on the throttle, your foot is already there. Well, there's ever so slight lag in that, which means you need to be quite on it with spotting the lights changing. But given we're in normal mode, we should probably go back into the automatic side of things. Coasting, even though it didn't actually come to a complete stop, it did switch off. I guess we've got all that side of the tech as well, cylinder deactivation style things, and everything that basically makes it a very nice cruiser. Anyway, I've rambled on for an awful long time. I've had a really fun drive actually so far, but let me see if I can find somewhere to pull over and just swing you a little bit more through some of the inside stuff and give some more thoughts about the car. It looks like it's about to get an awful lot wetter here, but while I'm sat inside the car, let's take a look around and press some more buttons and see what you interact with while you're sat here and what it looks like and what it feels like. So number one, of course, the steering wheel. I've talked a little bit about the drive mode selector, the toggle that is located within easy reach on the right hand side, but you also have your other media controls and the like, and the ability to scroll through different displays. So on the left side, you go through your trip modes. I noticed the speed limiter is set to 241 kilometers an hour. That is also to do with it being on winter tires, which are limited to 240. On the right hand side, you can scroll through the right hand display, so again, more information, or bring up the full screen navigation system, which is nice as well. Starting night view assist, generating image, so that is your literally night vision. Very nice, we all like that. Awesome, cool. Back to the trip information, you have the clock over to the right hand side. That's quite nice, and it shows us the suspension setting mode as well down there. So I like the lighting, the white LEDs with the red highlights and accents that you see around, all looks very, very nice. The speed limit signal at the left hand side as well. The toggle for starting and stopping the car, your light controls, I presume, well, memory seats, and then the lock and unlock controls. Confused me for a second there, shouldn't have done. Here you can open and close the boot, windows, mirrors, usual bits and pieces. The door handle pulls, nice carbon fibre Panamera turbo door sills. Your seats that you can move in a bazillion different directions. You can move the front section forwards and backwards, you can do your lumbar, you can do everything down there. This car has the Bose hi-fi system as well installed. Over to the right hand side, obviously usual stalks for bits and bobs. And then down here, let's talk about the navigation and climate side of things. So climate control, we'll bring this up, which is nice. You can turn off the center vent, which will, as you saw, close up that vent, which is quite fun. You can reposition where it's pointing. This car is gadget overload as well, by the way. I mean, you just move this and then you can watch it reposition depending on what you've asked it to do. Oh, that is fun to do. The silly things, hey, that keep us entertained. Airflow out the top, and you can adjust this in so many different ways. As you can see, you have a lot of control over climate control. It's not a simple little part of the system. In car, if you press there, you've got the option to raise and lower the height of the car, adjust the spoiler, which in the regular car has that sideways opening spoiler, which is a nice little touch and feature as well. Your different driving modes, come through all of this, and literally you can change and configure so much. It's just impossible for me to remotely begin to show you everything. But although there's a tiny bit of lag to the system, it is very bright and gives you a nice look to it, which I think is important. It could be a touch faster, I'm not going to lie. Connected, so we've got access to lots of information, data, services, and all of the like. So go back. Yeah, I don't even know what would be considered the home. There's home. There we go, where we've got different tiles and the ability to quick hot step into different modes. So again, haptic, well, not haptic, but for the temperature and things, you press up and down on these toggles. For the fan speed, then you've got the haptic feedback for your seat heating, your window buttons, your suspension mode, and your traction control. Now, I've mentioned before, one thing I don't necessarily like is that you can just about make out that the additional buttons, the options that you don't have, so to speak, are just not even present, which, well, they're there but not illuminated, and I feel like I would rather not see them. I kind of preferred cars in the days of blanking plates. Carbon fibre, well, could be ashtray, but little storage pouch, 2 cup holders which have things in there that actually rise up. There we go, and then it becomes a flat armrest, or you just put them back down. Unusual, but it does the job. Armrest. Not the biggest storage in the armrest, to be honest. Some little compartments, but you could definitely, in theory, have more space up there, and USB, auxiliary cable, and the 12-volt socket at the back. Passenger side, nice carbon fibre fascia, decent sized glove box, lots of space in there, that's good. And then just to show you the seat design, sporty seat design that we've got here with these small wings up above the shoulders, turbo embossing on the top of that as well, and then it's the front panel down here that can adjust in addition to the rest. So with the car still running, I'm going to hop out and jump into the rear. I'll show you some of the entertainment that we have available to us back there, and this weather is very grim right at this moment. But stepping back in here, see the space. Obviously the driver's seat is in my driving position, and there's ample space. I'm just short of 6 foot, 5'11" or so. So more than enough room in there, just I think about 1.80 m for those of you in metric. So back here, we've got a similar seat setup. In this car, we've got the 2+2 configuration like the regular Panamera. So you've got a seat that feels very much like the front seat in the back, which is nice. Down in here, you've got a storage bucket, which has your cup holders and additional USB ports, which is nice as well. Obviously, you have access to the digital screen here, which similarly to the front is very high resolution. Access to control your heating and a number of bits and pieces that you can have in there and control through this. So we can go to options, media, you can bring up different features, and this is all rather replicated off the front. It's very similar style and feel, which is nice. I'll close back up that carbon tray. I quite like the way that opens and closes in sync. Behind us we have the little armrest we can lower down with a decent sized storage bucket inside there actually, but you can lower this whole middle section. He says there's this lever at the top to lower that down, and then you have a through load system for your skis or whatever you might want to put through here underneath the rear shelf that you could also remove should you wish. So that side of things actually works really quite well, easily and efficiently. Not the biggest fan of these pouches that aren't straight edged, because as soon as you try and put something paper inside them, it obviously gets curved around and goes very wrong. So that's not my number one thing back there. But let us jump quickly out again
to have a last little look, wrap up the exterior of the car before I get totally drenched. And one thing while it's running, actually, I'm going to head towards the front because I want to show you those active air flaps. Obviously, when the car is parked stationary, the engine needs cooling, but it's not getting that much air from movement, and those flaps I showed you at the beginning are open, which is quite nice to be able to see how that whole front end, basically the whole lower end, is used for cooling around the front. See the lights on with their quad style squared LEDs. Overall though, a very enjoyable car, one that I like an awful lot. I'd love to drive the e-hybrid to go see what 680 horsepower is like in the car. But in terms of German efficiency, you couldn't really ask for more. It's going to be reliable, it all works how you expect. You're probably not going to see bits of trim falling off, that kind of thing, which in a car with this much power makes it immensely capable to use for everything, but also to take out for an enjoyable drive. So definitely an interesting car. Watch this space. Maybe get a drive in one of those in the e-hybrid at some point in the future. But for now, a big thanks to Porsche. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope you guys have enjoyed looking at the car and seeing a lot more about it. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you very much, and I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers.